So if you happen to read the article in Frontline Fundamentals that was recently published in IP Magazine, the title of it was "I Am a Good Putter: What Golf Teaches Us About Safety Success." And the premise of that, a little background in case anybody didn't read that, at our IP conference, the last one we had, which was in Glendale, Arizona, back in the fall, the reception was at Pop Stroke. So we had a guy from a golf course, a pro, come in and give us a putting lesson, which I thought was really interesting. And the guy's name was Art Eklund, and I'd give Art all the credit where credit's due. I can't imagine there's many golf pros in the world that have ever come and stood in front of 500 people to give them a putting lesson while they were eating lunch, and he did a really good job with it. And the basic premise of what I want to talk about today is he taught us some technical things. He used the acronym for CHEF: club face, hand, eyes, and feet, and taught us a little about putting. But the interesting thing that he said was the ability to make a putt starts with telling yourself that I am a good putter. And I really got to thinking about how that applies to safety. And specifically, we might even talk a little more about training today. So for our purposes, I even want to change the title up a little bit and call it "I Am a Good Putter Who Is Going to Be Great." And so give you the opportunity to help us out with the presentation a little bit. And I'm going to launch a poll. And everybody, quick, just first impressions, just answer those. I believe it's 5 questions. And I'll give everybody about 10 or 15 seconds to do that. And then we'll share the results. Is anybody seeing the poll? Okay, good. Yep, some responses are coming in. So I'm just going to pause for 15, 20 seconds and let everybody answer those. And we got a good crowd here. I appreciate everybody being here. I love these Frontline Fundamentals. I love IP Magazine, not so much my article, but the other ones that I read. It's a really good resource. And so there's still some responses coming in. I'm going to wait maybe 15 more seconds. So answer those quick as you can, and then I'll share the results. Okay, and if you can't see it, obviously you can't answer. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I think you'll enjoy at least a few of the questions and seeing the responses to them regardless. All right, I am going to 5 more seconds. Answers in quickly. Now I'm going to end that poll and share the results. Doug, you'll appreciate the first question. First question: I am here because I love David and Frontline, and I read the article and it inspired me to learn more. The majority, I like that. I heard rumors the great Doug Hill was going to be here today, 4%, and it's free, and I want my CUSP points. About a third of folks. I appreciate that. My always joke is these are free, and you'll get what you pay for today. If you were here last month, we talked a little bit about airport security and how they use UV lights to sanitize the men. And some of you have now learned that you shouldn't bypass that safety device, so to speak. I'll explain that in a minute. The question's more pertinent to our conversation. When playing golf and preparing to hit a shot, you're focused on a water hazard and you're sitting there telling yourself, like, I can't get over this hazard. The most likely outcome, and I think the majority answered correctly, is the ball goes in the water and you're going to get a penalty stroke. Only 18% said if we start with a negative mindset that we're going to hit a good or a great shot. That was really interested to see the answers to question 4. At my organization, people show up to safety meetings and safety training. 21%, about a fifth of everybody, said apathetic, dreading it, and wanting it to be over ASAP. And that's one of the things that I really want to focus on today. Glad to see at least some, 12% said excited to learn and discover ways to keep themselves and their team safe. And that is going to be a focus area today. How can we get people actually, safety is a great thing. Like, we all agree with that. It's a good thing. It's all about keeping people safe, making sure everybody not only stays the same, prevent harm, but also encourage growth. Safety is about making people better, and it's a great thing. But it really does kind of bother me how people show up to safety meetings and just, you know what I mean? The folks that come in, sit in the back with their safety glasses on, playing on their phones, and they could care less. And I'm glad to see the majority of the answers were somewhere between apathetic and excited. Doug can tell you later about a group he had one time in a training that actually walked in, didn't sit in the back row. They got the chairs off the back row and took them out in the hall. Now, I really want you to think about that. And then this is an interesting question. Okay. Do you still have a friend you regularly spend time with that constantly criticizes you and always tells you what you need to do better? Third of you, glutton for punishment, still love spending time with that friend. You're good people. No, I had a friend like this and now I avoid him like the plague. 43%, the majority of the answers fell into that category. And 21% of you said you'd never even start a relationship with a person like this. So somewhere between those last two answers, 64%, 2/3 roughly of the group basically said, if we have a friend that constantly criticizes us and just tells us what we need to do better all the time, either we wouldn't have a relationship at all with them or that relationship would end quickly. Keep that in the back of your mind as we go through the presentation. So that question number 3, just for those of you that were here last month, you remember that conversation? Doug, quiz question. What airport is this picture from? I took it myself.
That is Newark.
That would be Newark Airport. And right behind that sign is a UV light that sanitizes the bin. People with good intentions pick their bin up, go put it in the little thing, and they bypass the safety device. And people don't know this. So part of my mission to promote safety throughout the world is if you see that UV light in an airport, don't pick your tray up. Let the tray go under. It sanitizes it. So for the 47% of you said you had no clue what that question we're talking about, there it is. Absolutely nothing to do with what we're going to talk about today. What we are going to talk about today is this. And I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but the quote from Henry Ford is a good place for us to start. Whether you think you can or whether you think you cannot, you're probably right. I use that a lot in our CUSP prep and some of our other training, our mindset going into things. And I mentioned some things in here that really bother me about safety. And uncaring body language during job briefings. We talked about training a little bit already. Listening to people say no matter what you do and how hard you try, somebody's going to get hurt. And to hear the us versus them attitudes, whether it's management, employees, or unions and companies, or whatever it may be, one department or another, people speaking badly about each other and blaming each other. So my number one pet peeve, though, is our intense focus on what we don't want. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. But we want to talk about then, how do you focus on what you do want, believe you can succeed, make a plan that will ensure you succeed, and then something I think that typically a lot of people fail miserably at is share successes. We are really, really good at safety after the fact. We are really, really good at being reactive to incidents and lessons learned and root cause analysis and all these sort of things. I really want us to think about how can we get good at safety right here, right now, and actually learn to be proactive. And I believe that the number one answer to that, certainly not the only answer, is share successes. Focus a little more on what we do right. And so to set all that up, and I put some, I am a good putter. I put some great quotes, or I shouldn't say great quotes, some quotes I found from some fairly popular golfers in here. And let's start with this quote, and then I want to show you a picture, and we'll talk a little more about it. Sometimes the biggest problem is in your head. You've got to believe you can play a shot and succeed at that shot instead of wondering where your next bad shot is coming from. Jack Nicklaus said that. And it tends to tie into the first part of that. Focus on what we want. And Gary Player said, the more I work and the more I practice, the luckier I seem to get. Think about that in terms of safety too. So in the chat window there, what does anybody see in this picture here? And we've already answered kind of the point behind it, which is if I stand on that tee box and I focus on that water or one of those two bunkers and I'm telling myself like I can't get over this water, I've got to avoid that bunker. And all I'm focused on is the obstacles. I'm probably not going to hit a good shot. And there's actually a lot of sports psychiatrists and folks like that that would tell you, if you're looking at and focused on the water, your ball's going in the water. And, oh, I like that. We got people with good positive attitudes about it. Just a warm, bright, sunny day. Very good answer, Wes. And Zach had also a fantastic answer, a hole in one. I play golf 3 or 4 or 5 times a week. And like, I have never myself had a hole in one or played with anybody that had a hole in one. Absolutely drives me crazy. That's like, and you can't just go make a hole in one. I really hope that happens to me one day. But the point behind that being is, if we're just focused on what we don't want, which in this picture would be the water or the bunkers or out of bounds over to the left or right or whatever it may be, we might not be as successful as if we focused on where we actually wanted to hit our ball, which is onto the green, and preferably, as Zach said, just straight in the hole. Don't even need to putt. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're a good putter or not. I like that. In terms of safety, what do we not want? Accidents and incidents, and in that's a solid answer there. Good hazard identification. There might be an alligator or crocodile in that water. There's a hazard. We don't want hazards to hurt people. Now, I want to ask this question. How much time in your safety meetings, in your training, do you spend talking about accidents and OSHA rates and all those sort of things and all the bad things that have happened? And I would maybe say, for a lot of people, yeah, the answer gravitate towards all or most of them. I'm glad to see some of you don't as much. But if it's 50%, I would challenge you to at least flip that script. So at a minimum, we're spending at least 51% of our time talking about what we do want versus what we don't want. And think about what we teach people in training. Is it all about what to avoid? And I always like fun little exercise sometimes. Just go get your safety manual out and flip to a random page and read 4 or 5 of the little bullets. And do they start with thou shalt not? Or do they say, here's what we actually want you to do? And my point in saying that, I hope everybody understands, is we spend too much time talking about what to avoid and what we don't want, and we don't spend enough time teaching people what actually to do. And let safety be, here's the correct, right things we're doing, and the byproduct of that be nobody gets hurt. But if we start with nobody gets hurt, it's very difficult to get past just people trying really hard and paying close attention and all that sort of thing. So principle 1, focus on what you want. Okay. And there's part of the article in here that goes through that. I like those of you that are familiar with who Tiger Woods is. He was a pretty good golfer. Thinking about that water and those bunkers and whatnot, I smile at obstacles. In other words, I'm confident enough in my ability, those obstacles can't hurt me. In terms of safety, we should be confident enough in our skills of identifying hazards, quantifying risk, and then using tools like the hierarchy of controls to protect ourselves from, where when we see hazards, every single job site is hazardous. No single job site is dangerous. And the next thing is, then we have to make a plan that ensures we succeed. And we talk about the tools that kind of help us do that. And I love that quote. I want to read a couple of these quotes to you. Putting is like wisdom, partly a natural gift and partly the accumulation of experience. And then I'm definitely not the kind of person that likes to read PowerPoint slides, but part of this I think is worth saying. Trying not to get hurt isn't a good plan. And I'm actually curious, do people agree, disagree with that? Thoughts on it? Doug, jump in here if you want. Trying not to get hurt isn't a good plan.
And I would just say, as I wrote down there, we talk about what we what we want, and a lot of people say this is what we want, but we don't talk about how we can control what we can control and make that happen. So like we don't actually put put ourselves at the center of that. We actually put all the other elements at the center of it.
Yeah, 100% agree. Control what you can control. And hear me say, definitely part of the goal of safety is making sure people don't get hurt. I agree with that. But I think part of the answer to how do we make our safety meetings and our safety training more appealing is give people tools and focus more on the tools and what they need to do and what they can use and how it benefits them than spending too much time talking about, like, here's how to avoid an accident and here's how the horrible ways an accident will affect you and your family if you have one. It's almost like we're unintentionally threatening people. We don't mean to, and it's with good intentions, and there's value in that. Hear me say, that needs to be part of safety discussions, is people helping people understand the consequences of actions and whatnot. But it's a couple of quick examples that come to mind. Doug and I right now are doing work for a pretty big, large utility, and it's a lot focused on SIF prevention, serious injuries and fatalities. They started this big, huge initiative in 2024. And in the year 2024, this particular company had 26 SIFs, serious injuries or fatalities. They didn't have any fatalities, but they had 26 SIFs. And it's credit where credit's due. That inspired them to do a lot of work to say, we don't want to have SIFs anymore. But the thing that interests me about that particular organization, there's 14,000 employees there. And I should have written this down ahead of time, but if my math is correct, that means 13,974 of their employees didn't experience a SIP that year. And how much time do we spend focusing on those 26 people? And do we even think about those 13,000 plus people that even like investigate that? Like, what are people doing that don't have SIFs? And spend a little more time doing that than people that do have SIFs. Back to golf, I was playing one time. And one of the people I was playing with, and this is a very bad habit David has when he plays golf, I dropped my right shoulder really bad in my backswing, or as I shift from backswing to follow through, whatever. And they kept saying, like, stop dropping your right shoulder. And it was really interesting. There was a person that's like a PGA teaching pro or whatever you call them playing with us. And they were like, it's much better when you're coaching somebody in golf. If you tell somebody to stop dropping their right shoulder, embedded in that phrase is drop your right shoulder. And they started explaining kind of how your mind's work and whatnot. And that actually leads to people trying so hard not to drop your right shoulder that you end up either dropping your right shoulder and or screwing something else up really bad trying not to. They's like, it's much better to phrase that, keep your shoulders level. And as we were going through that, I'm one of those that's constantly thinking about leadership and human performance and safety and all the things that we teach. And I'm like, man, that's a great lesson about like providing coaching and feedback, and the way we handle safety is focus more on saying phrases like keep your shoulders level rather than phrases like stop dropping your right shoulder. And then success, speaking of SIFs, a lot of people use phrases like this now. Success, keeping in mind that success is building capacity to fail safely. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to make errors. And it is actually normal to make mistakes and errors. What is not okay is when I make a mistake or an error that then leads to an injury. Building capacity to fail safe. And then share your story. And again, another quote from Tiger Woods here: no matter how good you get, you can always get better. And I think that two things come to mind there. I think we've done such a good job of training and teaching people compliance, they don't actually understand safety. And there's a difference between safety and compliance. And I also think that we tend to settle for being good at safety, meaning either we're not having any accidents, our OSHA rate's 0 or it's very low, and we're satisfied with where we are. And safety is something that we can never be satisfied with. It's got to be something we're always working towards continuous improvement with. And so one of the things that I actually don't want to talk about, I'm going to let Doug talk about it. After action reviews. Tell me about after action reviews and post job. Don't tell me, tell everybody. Post job briefings, after action reviews. What should you talk about in those?
So there's really three things, and it's and what's funny is that everybody will look at David and I and will say, well, this is something they cooked up in the lab for themselves, right? For their theories on it. That is not true at all. In fact, the military has been doing this forever and ever and ever after action review. And these are the three things that they cover. What went well, which is exactly what we were just talking about. They never start with the negative. Tell me what went well. Tell me what didn't go well. And then say, how do we duplicate what went well or fix opportunities? Because opportunities are not a failure. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to get better. We may have got it done successfully, but overall we had an opportunity to get it better. So I always tell people, what did you do well? What didn't you do well? And how do you, yeah, and somebody on there, David wrote on there as well. I didn't even see it was from you, but military and everybody, any successful organization uses those regularly, and they call them a lot of different things. Airline pilots call them a debrief for them. They have a lot of different, after work mission teardown. They have all these different acronyms and names for it, but the idea is that what you can do from that is you actually learn how to get better so that the conversations like he's talking about now don't become white noise at the next safety meeting. Safety meetings actually can have some meat in them from something that went well or something that was an opportunity, not just one or the other.
Yeah, so that balance. And by the way, speaking of airline pilots, for those of you that follow, and if you don't, this is good. Doug recently did one of his podcasts, Built In, Not Bolted On, and interviewed Odie Espenship. Some of you may know who he is, but that's worth listening to if you want to learn more about what we were just talking about there. But again, that balance. And I would encourage folks, number one, if your crews aren't doing post-job briefings, to have them start doing post-job briefings. It's a really, really good tool. And encourage them at least that 51% balance. Focus more on success than you do failure. Unless, obviously, like if you had a sip that day or anything like that, you don't want to spend much time talking about what happened. Right. But outside of that, like, get people comfortable sharing successes and get people comfortable looking for success and complimenting each other on success. And I think when you do that, you'll start to create a culture where people are more comfortable communicating and people will buy into it more. This is why, obviously, I hope if you're thinking about that poll question now, this is why I ask, do you still have a friend that you want to spend time with that just talks about what went wrong and what we need to do better? And 64% total said either I want nothing to do with that person or that relationship's going to end quickly. Go ahead, Doug.
So the one thing I would add to that, and I guess just even push back a little bit, is saying that you have to make sure that you are talking about the good, even in a very critical failure, because the importance of that is anybody that failed at that level or had a failure at that level, they don't need a reminder. They have all the things in front of them that tells them that it happened. What I mean is if they had somebody that got significantly hurt, you don't need to remind them that it was a bad outcome. They already know that. So the best thing you can do is go in there and say, hey, what parts of this were a success, but also what opportunity there again, you can use this to make a better landing for getting better information. Because if I go in and David had a significant incident and I completely focus on all the things that went wrong there, how much information am I going to get from David to actually cure what's going to go forward? But if I start talking a little bit about, yeah, hey, there was parts of this that looked really good, but where do you think this got off track? And give them an opportunity to give you some of that feedback. So I think John on here put, hey, use preventive and mitigative controls to, for a hazardous energy release. Like say to yourself, how would I keep this from releasing negative energy in the future? How would we put ourselves in a position so we're not in the fire when it happens?
Very solid point. Very solid point. And just to make sure, no part of this is implying we shouldn't spend time investigating errors. We decidedly should spend time investigating success, incidents, all that. And one of the things that I really love watching Doug doing when he's teaching kind of this concept is he'll ask all the people in the room who drove here. And, you know, most people drive to wherever it is they're going. And then he'll ask a follow-up question and say, who wrecked or had a vehicle accident crash on the way here? And it really, the first time I heard him say that, I really got to thinking about how we handle safety. I'm like, if one person in the room raises their hand and said, I had a vehicle accident on the way here, where does 150% of our attention and effort go? When let's just say there's 50 people in the class, that means there's 49 people that didn't. There was 49 successes and or luck, and you have to understand the difference between those two. And we just completely ignore that and don't think about all the skillful things folks might have done that we could learn from, and try to learn the lesson that somebody's already learned the hard way. I said to start, we're already good at safety after the fact. And Doug made a great point. I think it is absolute insanity if I have a SIF that we try to help me understand how not to have that SIF again, if that makes sense. I'm pretty sure I already understand it. So you touch the stove, you don't touch it again. It's hot, kind of thing. There is value in thinking and learning from not only the people that person that got hurt, but the people that they were working with, and understanding the environment that they were in, what encouraged them to do the things that they did well, but what also encouraged them maybe to do the things that they didn't, and what were their decision-making factors involved in it. So I've asked this question to a lot of people, and the most common answer I get is to why we don't ever compliment people. Whether we're talking about observations and coaching and feedback, we tend to focus on the things that are wrong and not the things people are doing right. Whether it's incident investigations, whatever else it is, it's their job. It's expected. We don't need to talk about safety. We're not going to compliment people on it because that's what we pay them to do. And that tends to be a lot of people's attitude, which is really ironic to me because we are exceptional at saying good job, horrible job, you're fired, get out, if people aren't operationally excellent. And by that, I mean, if somebody's just not productive, if they're not doing a good job, if they compare and contrast these two things. If somebody on one of your job sites, I'll just pick an overhead distribution crew, set a pole crooked and was hanging the cross arm sideways, how quickly would every single person speak up, exercise their stop work authority, and say, hey, David, that's not right, stop? Almost 100% of people say absolutely every single time, we're going to correct that. I'm pretty sure people get paid to set poles straight. Exactly, yes. And it would be like, yes, hey, stupid, stop right now. That cross arm's not straight. Like, people would correct me. But what if I didn't have my hard hat and my safety glasses on while I was doing that, and there was actually some hazards there that could hurt? Who would speak up then? And then it goes back to this whole concept of, well, safety's not my job, all these things. So that may be the main point, at least that I wanted to share today, is, again, focus on what we want, which is building the capacity to fail safely, which is using controls, direct controls as they're defined if we're talking about SIF potential, using human and organizational performance tools, and focus on what we want. And then from there, define what success is, make a plan to ensure that success happens. And when it does, investigate and analyze that success, and then share the lessons we learned from that. And I've seen it work. The more people do that, the more safety starts to appeal to people. Heaven forbid somebody might walk into one of your trainings and sit in the first row and be excited about what they may hear. And that's something that I hope we can all work towards, because it really does bother me to hear, like, I'm one of those kind of people that, like, before training, I like to hang out either somewhere in the room where people can't see me, and or like a really good place to hang out, as odd as this sounds, is in a bathroom stall where people don't know you're in there. And you hear the conversation, like, got to sit through that safety training today, got that frontline class coming up. Like, and it's just the attitudes that people have coming in. And it's like, man, the things we're talking about could not only at work, but in whatever you do on the weekends and family. If we're talking about leadership, relationships, all that kind of thing, like, it's good, beneficial stuff. And people dread it. And if they walk in dreading it that bad, they're probably not going to be that engaged and focused and participate and add the value that they have. So, I wanted to quickly just mention, for this Friday, matter of fact, is our next forum. if you're not familiar with that, just scan that QR code and come once. It's free, just like this is. And I actually promise you'll get a lot more than you pay for there. It is good. The IP magazine, I'm assuming since you're here, probably everybody gets IP magazine. And I did want to mention in May, month and a half or so, our next IP conference is coming up. This is the point in time where I am going to stop the recording